Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second ever episode of the Security Talkdown. This week, we'll be talking all sorts of football, and guess what? We have football back this week. Week 0 is finally came, and I cannot be any more excited to talk about it today on top of a few other preseason things. I will be your host today, Carson.Sickeri, and today on the Security Talkdown, we'll be going over what I think the conference champion matchups will be, some over-under win totals, and obviously the deep dive of Week 0 that we've all been waiting for. To begin, though, I do want to talk about how I am going to go over these conference champions, but I'm also going to go over the group of 5 as well. I don't just love the Power 4, I love college football in general. And if you love college football in general, you love the group of 5 too. There's a lot of sneaky good teams there that I want to talk about and deserve their respect. But first off, we will start with the group of 5 at some point, but we're actually going to start off with the Power 4 champions. So, leading it off, we're going to start in the Big Ten. The Big Ten matchup, I do have Penn State, Ohio State. Now, with these conference champions, obviously all that matters is your conference record, not your overall record. So a lot of these teams I'll be talking about today, I'll be talking about their conference record more than probably their overall record. So, for instance, the Ohio State-Texas game week 1, which we're all excited for, does not have any implications toward this. All it really impacts is your playoff predictions and records. But diving in, I do have Penn State being a one-loss team in conference with their loss coming to Ohio State at the shoe, going in against Ohio State, who I have undefeated in conference play. And I do see Penn State actually pulling this off and winning the Big Ten. I feel as if Penn State has not beat Ohio State in over 10 years almost, but I feel like with them getting film on Ohio State, I think they will finally beat them on a big stage. But also don't be shocked if Ohio State wins this too. I feel like those are the two teams in the Big Ten I see winning it the most. But I do actually predict Penn State winning the Big Ten in a close game in Indy. If not, the roles are flipped where Penn State beats them in the regular season and then Ohio State beats them in the Big Ten championship. I really do not see a team sweeping. I feel like they're both very talented teams, and I think at some point Penn State will finally break that wall. Teams I could see sneaking in here is Oregon sneaking into the Big Ten. I feel that could also be a big matchup as well. Oregon does have a favorable schedule, but overall, I could just see these two teams running it. I mean, Penn State has a decent schedule this year that favors them as well. Ohio State, excluding Texas, has a pretty favorable schedule as well, which I think is one of the biggest things you need to factor in talking these conference champions is favorable conference play schedules. And I feel like those will be the two teams that will meet. Moving on to the SEC, I have Texas versus Alabama. I can see both of these teams in the championship being pretty good records and maybe one loss, potentially 2 losses in conference. SEC is so deep, obviously you might drop 1 or 2 games that you don't expect them to drop, but still will be overall, I think those two teams. The reason I don't think Georgia makes this is they have one of the probably toughest conference schedules this year, in my opinion, and I feel like Bama has a very favorable matchups on the season throughout, and that's why I have those two in the conference championship. I do believe Texas wins it, though. I think Texas beats Bama in the SEC championship in Atlanta, but overall, the SEC is kind of like a Big 12 in a way where there could be multiple teams in here, because I could also see, obviously, Georgia sneaking in if they do run the table with their very hard schedule, and then obviously LSU if they can get everything correctly with all the high hopes that they have this year. With that said, we'll be moving on to the ACC. The ACC, I have Clemson and Miami. Now, a lot of people are also thinking Clemson, Georgia Tech, but I have Clemson versus Miami, and I have Clemson going 8-0 in conference play. The only loss I could see them having is actually to Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech in Week 3. And if I think Georgia Tech wins that game, that could definitely throw Clemson for a big whirlwind and potentially put them out of the conference championship. Because I very much believe if Georgia Tech does beat them Week 3, Georgia Tech's going to get in with no problems asked. But overall, Miami I could see coming in 7-1 probably in conference play. Not really too hard schedule, but they do have probably one of the harder non-conference schedule this year with Week 1, Notre Dame, and then they have another really hard one against Florida in Week 3, I believe. So they have a really hard out-of-conference schedule, but it doesn't matter for in-conference. It's all about them staying healthy. But I do have Clemson winning this conference and beating Miami in the ACC championship. Moving on to the Big 12, obviously everyone knows Big 12, you could have 20 different teams in here, it feels like. I mean, at this point, I feel like in the Big 12, like I always say all the time, you're closing your eyes, you're throwing a dart at the board, and you're hoping to be right. But that's what makes this conference fun, in my opinion. And the matchup I have is Texas Tech versus Arizona State. Now, to be fair, both of these teams could easily be there. Both these teams could easily be out. But the reason I pick both of these teams is I feel they have the strongest team, and also they play each other week 7, I believe, of the Big 12 season. And I do at Arizona State, and I do have Arizona State winning that game. But I feel like in a rematch, beating a really good team twice is hard to do. And I think Texas Tech will only grow stronger and stronger over the year. ASU does have probably one of the most impressive teams returning in the Big 12. But with that said, I actually do have Texas Tech winning the Big 12. But other potential teams I could see sneaking their way into the Big 12 championship is Baylor, Utah, Iowa State, and Kansas State. But as we all know, week 0 this week we have Iowa State and Kansas State. So right after that game, we will probably be able to take one of those teams off that list already. That early in the year. And that's what's awesome about college football. In the NFL, you can drop games early and still have a chance to win your division. You could lose week 0 that quick and already be out of your conference championship. It's one of the many reasons why I love this sport. Now moving on to the group of 5. A lot of talk that people won't talk, but you know what? I love the group of 5, and that's why we're going to start with the Mountain West. Mountain West, I think this is no shocker here. I have UNLV and Boise State, both probably the two best teams in the Mountain West, in my opinion. We'll obviously see some action from UNLV in less than a couple of days against an FCS school, but still get to see them live first. I do have Boise winning this, though. They do play each other in the regular season as well, and I'm excited to see this game if it happens, but I think I'm just more excited to track both these teams and see them in the end. But I think Boise State will beat UNLV, even though UNLV does have a lot to prove this year. The Sun Belt. So the Sun Belt, I have JMU versus Texas State. And a lot of people are probably going to be like, those aren't the two best teams in the Sun Belt. Well, that's because the Sun Belt still does the traditional East and West division format. And the East Division, where JMU is in, is loaded with App State, Marshall, Georgia Southern, all the teams that are usually more predominant in the Sun Belt, while the Texas State side really only has Louisiana, that could probably have a good in South Alabama, 2 other teams. But I do see Texas State representing them on that side. Overall, I do think JMU will win this game, though. They have the way stronger division, and I feel as if they will run the table and win. Texas State does have a lot to prove, though, this year. They are coming off 2 very high seasons in their program with 8-win seasons, and I just don't see any other scenario where JMU doesn't win this game. But potential others, obviously, I do see sneaking in as Louisiana and South Alabama on the other side. Moving into the Conference USA, I have Liberty against another team that's playing in Week 0, Western Kentucky. I feel as if Liberty will run the table with this conference as well, even though Western Kentucky is predominantly one of the better teams in the Conference USA and always has that air raid offense that can just sling it around everywhere. They're a great team to bet, but in this situation, I'm going to still go with Liberty. And I feel as if Liberty should get back to what they used to be last year. I think it was a down year for Liberty. Wasn't really true to themselves. I think this year they'll get back and win the conference that was once theirs. Moving into the American. The American, I have Navy versus Tulane. Yes, the Navy midshipmen. I feel as if the American will be one of the better group of 5 conferences this year, and they have a real shot at getting that group of 5 bid into the 12-team playoff. And I see this game honestly going anyway. This is one of the games I really had to sit back and say, well, Army won it last year. Can Navy win it? And I most definitely think Navy can win it. But at the same time, Tulane did just get a big transfer quarterback in Retzloff. And I feel it'll take him a couple weeks to get moving and get comfortable with the system. But after that, I feel like Tulane is still the team to beat in the American. And that's why I am going to put my pick on Tulane to win the American. But don't be shocked if Navy also pulls it out either, because I am a very big fan of the midshipmen and what they're doing down there in Annapolis, Maryland. And finally, the MAC. Who doesn't love action on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at around week 5, week 6? It's just one of my favorite things on a random Tuesday or Wednesday. You can sit back, watch some college football, and you can really learn these teams because it takes a lot of heart to play on a Tuesday and Wednesday on these weird weeks. It's definitely a love of the game. But obviously, I think this conference just goes back to its traditions. It's going to be Toledo versus Ohio. And I think Toledo wins the conference without too much struggle. Toledo has always been one of the more dominant teams in that conference. and I feel like it's going to be the same story. I mean, traditionally, they've dominated this for years. It's always a fun conference to watch, and there's nothing better than a little confusion action going along, but don't overthink this one. I think it is Toledo winning the MAC. So after all those conference championships we've went over, I do feel like there is some other ones you could plug in, but overall, I do pick my champions. I will stay strong to them, and let's see how they work. I find something cool that you'll see potentially 2 or 3 of those teams I talked about already playing in week 0 in a couple of days, which we will go over here in a little bit. But real quick, before we hop into week 0, which I'm very excited about, I do want to give you guys some over-under win totals that you guys should watch. And the reason I'm giving you guys, you don't have to bet them, but I just want you guys to know that some of these teams do have low and some do have high win potential. And that's why I feel like these teams I'm about to list can exceed. And if you'd like to bet them, please do. For the first team I'm going to talk about is Nebraska. Their over-under win total is at 7.5, and I am most definitely taking the over. I personally have actually put money on this myself. Nebraska has a lot of high hopes this year. People are putting them at potential playoff hopes. I think a 7.5 win season for Nebraska. I think honestly, if they have a 7-win season and hit the under, that's a very disappointing season for Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola there in Nebraska. I think they hit this over. I don't think they do it easily, but I do think that this team will get there. Another one is Wisconsin under 5.5. This team has one of the hardest schedules I've seen in a long time out of the Big Ten team. I mean, and put on top of it, their out-of-conference game is against Alabama at Alabama. I feel like they're going to hit this under. It's going to be a rough year for Luke Fickell, and I think there's not much more to be said about that, except I feel they will probably not win more than 4 games, if I'm being honest. Next one, I have Oklahoma over 6.5. They have a lot of expectations this year, and I think they're going to ride those expectations and clear that over a 6.5 in an SEC schedule that is favorable in some ways, but they also need to pull off some upsets in some people's eyes. Vandy over 4.5. Vandy was a bowl team last year with 6 wins. I think they're still going to hit over 4.5. I mean, they're returning almost all their talent from last year of a team that took them to 6 games wins. And also, they didn't really get blown out much last year at all. And they kept games close, and people forget that they did lose a game last year to Georgia State and still won 6 games. So they really were a 7-8 win team. So I'm very high on Vandy again. Texas A&M, over, under, 7.5 line. This team is known to be the 8-4 Aggies. So obviously, if they're going to give me a line that's 7.5, I'm going to take the over. And not only that, I'm very high on Mike Elko this year, and I think he's going to take this team to new levels we've never seen at College Station. Now with all those over-unders talked about and totaled, it's finally time to dive into week 0. But before we dive into week 0, I do just want to talk real quick about the way I bet, so we can be on the same page, and so everyone knows out there the picks I'm recommending, not recommending, giving slight edges, and much more. Obviously, I will be going over every game of the week and all kinds of stuff every week. I want you guys to know that I will specifically tell you the games that I feel confident on, but I also will be giving you guys my honest opinion, too, on these games. I want to help you guys out as much as possible, I promise, but I also want to make sure you guys, if you are investing this money, I want you guys to put it in great spots or spots that I feel is comfortable. But also at the same time, if you guys do feel comfortable with the rundown I give and the information, then do it as well. Or if you don't like my information, but the information I gave you still helps you lean another way, take it as well. I promise I'm just here to help you guys. I do not get offended if you guys don't like my picks, go a different way. I also hope you guys do agree with my picks because I want you guys to also be on the same page as me. But with that said, I will tell you every week what game I have a security lock on, which game I think is a great one to bet. In between, all over the place. So I wanted to let you guys know. I just want to be upfront and honest person with you guys and let you know that's how we're going to roll this year. Secondly, I want all the sports bettors out there to listen and understand the importance of the first 4 weeks of college football. This is the most important time of the year because this is the closest time we'll ever be to Vegas in overall just profitability. I mean, Vegas knows as much as us right now, but we can use our knowledge like we can. They use algorithms. They use all kinds of stuff that doesn't help them. Common knowledge is very key in the beginning of the season, and that's why the first 3 or 4 weeks is so crucial in a college football betting world. Last year in the first 3 or 4 weeks, I made more money in those first 3 or 4 weeks than I did for the rest of the season, and I still had a great rest of the season. So you need to take advantage of the first 3 or 4 weeks because you're close. Every single week of football that goes on, Vegas just gains more knowledge, and they're just going to slowly widen that gap to the point where you get to week 10 or 11. These lines are so, like, 1 point off. It's really hard, and I'll have to do a lot more work when that comes around. But guess what? Right now, we're worried about these first 4 weeks. And secondly, I want you guys to know that do not lose faith in the team if they do not start out well. I mean, we are betting on 18 to 24. I mean, at this age, probably 26 now with all these COVID year people. But we're betting on this age of people. I mean, sometimes they will make mistakes, and sometimes the better team will just flat out not play well that day. And you'll be mad because the picks that you wanted didn't work out. But you have to remember, you cannot write off teams early because there's teams that will be underdogs to start the year that will end up being favorites by the end of the year. There will be teams that will have -3 spreads right now, but they play this game in week 8, they're going to be -10. There's just, the lines are so soft right now. That's what I love about this time of year, that you need to take advantage of them, and you need to know your teams. But also at the same time, if a team doesn't cover, do well, they can get hot. Kansas did that for me last year so well. They started the season terribly. Made me look like a fool at times betting them. But at the end of the year, they were knocking off ranked opponents like it was nothing. And you just have to understand that not every team is going to have a fall off like Florida State. Like, betting Florida State last year, you never would have expected that. And there's teams that will be like that this year. Not as bad as Florida State, but we'll try to find them early and avoid, because the portal can sometimes do that to you. But with all that said, you have to find the teams that you love against the spread. You have to find teams that you just find faith in, and I'm going to work hard to find that, because I always have my teams every year that I find faith in, and I'm going to keep myself honest too. You guys are going to know how I do in my security locks bets. You guys are going to know how I do in my security lockdown lay. Everything. I'm going to keep record on this show just to show you guys how honest I am and how this information works. And we'll go over later how you guys can get the security lockdown lay on Saturdays. But your security locks picks, you can get right through here and right through the TikTok. But moving in, we're finally going to talk about week 0, the moment we've been waiting for. I'm super excited to talk football with you guys. Can't be any more excited, quite honest. And we're going to dive in to the game of the week, which is not shocking, which is Kansas State, Iowa State, the Aer Lingus Classic. And it opens at Kansas State -3 is what I've seen a lot, and Iowa State at +130. Now, if there only being 5 games this week, obviously, we'll go over all 5. But there usually be like 2 or 3 game of the weeks. 2 or 3 usually games are slept on, but can't really have slept on games this week for 5 game slate. And then obviously the underdog, which we do actually have an underdog one I will be giving you guys this week. But anyways, hopping back into the game of the week. The game's obviously played in Dublin, Aer Lingus Classic. This game will be played at noon. We'll get to watch a little college game day before it. Super excited about that. But obviously, the key story of this one is the quarterback matchup between Becht, Avery Johnson, which quarterback will perform better, and much more. Now, also with these game of the weeks, I'm going to be deep diving every position and comparing them to each other to give you guys a scale at the end of what team I'm leaning towards also in that aspect as well. With that said, the quarterback battle, I do give a slight edge to Kansas State. I think Avery Johnson had to do a little more on his legs compared to Becht, and I think that's why I give him the slight edge there. But Rico Becht is still a very talented quarterback, and he will have to be watched for. Running back room, I give the slight edge to Iowa State. Both have very talented RB1s in Dylan Edwards and Hanson from Iowa State. But I think Iowa State's depth here needs to be noted for late game scenarios in week 0 where a lot of teams usually aren't in game shape condition. I think that will come very crucial in the end. Wide receiver slight edge, I do give to Iowa State once again. They have more talent spread out than just all focused on one guy. They have guys that know their roles compared to Kansas State. They have a guy I feel as if they just depend on. Tight end, no shocker here. I think it is a huge advantage to Kansas State. I think they're going to run away with this one. The tight end could have some key. But then this leads into one of the biggest factors of the game, in my opinion, is Iowa State has the huge advantage in offensive line. And I think that's going to play a huge key in this game. But then when you talk about the defensive ends, I do think Kansas State has a slight edge. Interior, D tackles, Iowa State. Kansas State does have some talent at linebacker, and it's not even close compared to Iowa State's. Kansas State, this is where they're going to have to win the game, if I'm being honest. Those are their playmakers on defense. And Austin Romaine, he is one of the most talented linebackers probably in college football. He needs to have a day, and he needs to help this team be the captain of the team. I believe he's the green dot. He needs to be running around and being the guy he is. But then corners and safeties, Iowa State blows this matchup out the water. Talented corners in Jontez Williams, Jeremiah Cooper, just talented players that I think are going to come down and basically give Kansas State a hard day in passing or running. And then special teams and coach both go to Iowa State. Iowa State's Matt Campbell, you've already said he's very high on. I'm very high on. So with all those totaled up, I do have those 8-4 in favor of Iowa State in the team breakdowns. The biggest focal point of this one, I think, is going to be Iowa State's offensive line and their corners. I think their offensive line is going to get movement up front. They're going to be able to climb to the second level and take on those linebackers. If you can neutralize those linebackers just a little bit, I feel like this game can go Iowa State's way. But if they are blitz happy like Kansas State usually is, these linebackers are still going to make plays. They're talented players for a reason, and I feel like they need to have a day just to help Kansas State on the defense. Wide receivers, I think, are going to have a little bit of frustrations with the talent of Iowa State's secondary. But overall, I do think Iowa State has the advantage. But going into it, you do have to remember, overall, it is a week 0 game. There's so many unexpecteds going on. So many things that could happen. So much uncertainty. I mean, you are basically just going off your guts. We're not watching their practices. I wish I could, but I can't. And you know what? Just sometimes you have to go, in my opinion, playing football all my life, you go by the coaching staff. What coach is going to have you prepared for that week 0 game? Which coach can put you in the best position to win? And I think Matt Campbell is that coach who is going to get his team ready to play ball. And that's why I think Iowa State dog at plus 130 outright is going to win this game. And the reason I don't think you should take the points is I do not see this game being won by Kansas State at 2 or 1 points where the points matter. I think this game is going to be won by different than that. So why take the points when I feel like this game is going to be won by a field goal or more each way? Just take them outright. I'm a very big believer in that, but I do think that Iowa State plus 130 is the pick for this one, but this is not a security lock play. I do not like the uncertainty that comes with big ranked matchups early in the season, but overall, there is 5 games this week. I am going to be taking my faith in that pick, and I think a lot of you guys out there will agree. Usually in this segment, then, we'll move on to the slept-on games after the game of the weeks, but obviously we don't have slept-on games this week because there's only 5. So moving on then, we're going to go to the upset or underdog game of the week, which usually the way this one will work is you might not see them as an underdog, but by the sports book, they're an underdog. So if they're an underdog on sportsbook, they can be up for grabs on the underdog of the week. In the underdog of the week, I have Stanford versus Hawaii. Hawaii is a 2.5-point favorite, and Stanford is plus 110. Not often do you see a Power 4 team being an underdog to a group of 5 team, let alone a team like Hawaii. I do think they are factoring in, it's obviously week 0, some uncertainty, time, change, travel. There's a lot going into it. But I lean towards Stanford here. I mean, you can never go against a Power 4 roster against a group of 5 roster, especially one like Hawaii. I mean, Stanford does not have a strong Power 4 roster whatsoever. But at the end of the day, I think lining up just hat on a hat, I do think Stanford will have more talented spread out through this game. I mean, they do have a lot of equal talent at wide receiver. Corners, they're shockingly pretty equal. But just at the end of the day, the O-line play, the front 7 on both sides, I think Stanford will dominate this game pretty handily up front. I do still feel like Hawaii will make plays. The only way I see Stanford losing this game is them having turnovers, being sloppy, much more. But at the end of the day, I do want to give Hawaii their respects. They are not a team that should be slept on in the Mountain West this year. They do have a senior quarterback returning, some talent at wide receiver. I mean, there's tons of talent there, but I just do not see a team that can take down a Power 4 team that early in the year, too. There's just a big gap in nutrition, all kinds of stuff, and that's why I think Stanford at plus 110 is my dog of the week. And not only my dog of the week, it is actually one of my security locks of the week that I will be straight betting. And just to go over real quick, my security locks of the week, when I say those, I am also straight betting those all myself. So they're not just picks out there for you guys. I am also straight betting them myself. So moving on, there's 3 more games we'll talk about because there's only 5 games this week. First off, we're going to get into my other security lock of the week, and that is Kansas State versus Fresno State. Kansas. Kansas versus Fresno State. My apologies. Kansas minus 12.5 versus Fresno State. Fresno State is a plus 350 dog. Excuse me. It's another Power 4 versus Group of 5 matchup, but this one is actually hosted by the Power 4 team in Kansas. Kansas' first game in the renovated stadium looks amazing, and you also have to remember Kansas is led by the 6-year quarterback in Jalen Daniels. Not the Jane Daniels you're probably thinking of, it's the Jane Daniels of Kansas. He is a very talented player. People forget that 2 years ago, this guy was talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Obviously, when you lose your offensive coordinator to a school and Andy Kolnecki, when he left, he's one of the better brains in college football. He made him look like a Heisman candidate at one point. Now he's struggling a little bit, but I think they did bring in a problem. They're going to fix it. And I think this is going to be an eye-opener game for him. Obviously, better quarterback play. Fresno State is starting E.J. Warner, a guy that's not played many games. 2 whole different levels of quarterbacks, which is obviously the biggest thing when I see in betting this game is you have quarterbacks that are on 2 whole different wavelengths. I mean, you have a guy that has done this, seasoned veteran, versus a guy that's coming in a little shaky. His first game is going to be against a Kansas team that has some talent, but it's an eye-opener. Kansas does have some dominant people up front that I think will control Fresno most of the game. Fresno State does have talented running backs, but I think they're going to be shut down most of the game, but they will bust off some runs. They will let people know that they are there to play. But there's too much talent spread out, I feel, for Fresno State. Kansas does have some dominant corners in Hamilton. They do have some strong wide receiver play, but the only way I can see Kansas not covering this spread or potentially even losing the game is just playing sloppy football with a bunch of turnovers, letting the ball fly when they shouldn't, defensive breakdowns, much more, because I will tell you, Fresno State is always known as a Group of 5 team that is very well coached. They can give you a run for your money, so they will come in prepared, and they will take advantage of Kansas's mistakes if they make them. They're not a team you should slouch on whatsoever. But with that being said, I do like Kansas State actually alt-lined up to 13.5 instead of 12.5, get a little more value, and hope it brings us home. And that is one of my security locks of the week of Kansas minus 13.5 against Fresno State, and we shall see how that goes. Jumping into the next game, our first conference matchup of the year in Sam Houston versus Western Kentucky, a Conference USA matchup that I think should have a little more meaning to it than it should. People forget that Sam Houston's coming off a 9-win season, best in program history since going to FBS, and I think people just honestly always assume Sam Houston is not being a great team, when in reality, they're actually a pretty strong team in the Conference USA usually. But still going up against Western Kentucky, who is minus 10. Sam Houston plus 310 as a dog. I see Western Kentucky being the team they always are. An air raid team that can just run and gun, throwing it on the outside, giving teams fits up the middle at all times. Western Kentucky always has a fun offense to watch. They're one of my favorite teams to watch in Conference USA because it's nothing but tempo football, air raid it out, and let your quarterback sling the ball. With that said, I do like, obviously, Western Kentucky winning this game, but I don't like the line at 10. I'm not a fan of trying to get pushes, so I'd actually outline that down to 9.5. Just take a half a point off. I do think Western Kentucky at home, first game of the season, the run and gun. I am very excited about this game, and I am taking Western Kentucky outline down to 9.5. Not a security lock pick, but it will be recommended, and I do actually have very good feelings about that pick. The last game we're going to over, which is the only FCS-FBS matchup of this week, of Idaho State and UNLV. UNLV opens up as a 24.5 point favorite, and Idaho is a plus 1,400 dog. I've seen a lot of talk of this game of Idaho State fans trying to start some drama with UNLV. I really don't understand that, if I'm being honest. Idaho State can be a good FCS school, but last year they did have a struggle year going 5-7 in FCS competition. And UNLV has a lot of high praise this year. They have aspirations to make the Mountain West Championship. They have aspirations of probably playoffs, if I'm being honest. And obviously, UNLV brought in a very talented coach in Dan Mullen who knows how to get a team ready to play football and brought in a lot of talent that I think Idaho State probably hasn't seen. And they obviously have probably one of the best running back trios in the country, not duos, trios, in Jane Thomas, Jane Glover, and Kayvon Lee. They're probably the three best players on their whole team, and they're all three in the same position. So I'm interested to see how Dan Mullen can get the touches spread out between these three guys and how he uses a three-headed monster like that. I just learned this morning that Dan Mullen has come out and said that both Alex Orji and Alex Calandri are both going to get reps this week. That was one of my biggest question marks because they're both talented quarterbacks. Obviously, Orji, the transfer from Michigan, and Calandri being the transfer from UVA. I was interested to see what way he'd go on this because Orji's a more talented runner. Calandri's more the talented passer, obviously. So I think he could use them both. I'm a huge person that is against split quarterbacks. I'm not a fan of that. You need to let a guy have a rhythm, and that's what you need at this level. So I think the competition battle I think he's doing it for an FCS game just to see what way he wants to go. But overall, I think UNLV has the better talent here. I've actually seen a lot of people going the over 64.5. I am not opposed to that whatsoever. If you guys have some question marks about that over, I will tell you right here and there, I do think that is a great play, but it's just not one I have faith in personally because, like I said, I'm a big believer in just not touching over-unders early in the season, but I do think that is the best over-under play of the week, if that does make you feel better. And overall, I do think the pick here is do not overthink it. It is FCS against FBS. 24.5 is a weird line, so I'd actually alt-line that down to 23.5. So with that said, my pick for that week is UNLV minus 23.5. It is not a security lock, but it is one that I will be focusing on throughout the game. So going back over all five of my picks of the week, since we can do that, I do have Iowa State plus 130. I do have Stanford plus 110 as a security lock. I do have Kansas minus 13.5 alt lined up as a security lock. I do have Western Kentucky minus 9.5, and I do have UNLV alt line down to 23.5. Those three other picks aren't security locks. I probably will end up betting, if I'm being honest, because I do a security lockdown lay, which I will go over here in about a minute or two. Probably be added on it, but overall, I do abide by these picks. I love them. I think all the facts here are shown. I've done a lot of research on these, and I can promise you guys that a lot of these teams are going to just be overall a little shaky in the beginning. It's week 0, and you just have to stay true to your gut. With that said, I do want to talk about my security lockdown lay real quick. The security lockdown lay is no more than 6 spreads a week that I'll be picking that can be used from the security locked picks, but there's no more than 6 a week. It's a parlay that I post on Saturdays that's going for the maximum. Obviously, you want to make sure your straight bet hits, but I love having a lay that goes for the maximum. Last year on my security lockdown lays, I hit 7 out of 13 on Saturdays. And let's just say I made a good bit of money because those parlays pay out from anywhere to $500 to $1,000. I did very well with those last year. I plan on doing those again. I will be posting those probably on YouTube Shorts, probably on Saturdays, but definitely go to my TikTok for those. But some of these picks I do talk over will be in the security lockdown lay. But just for this week, all 5 of these picks probably be in the security lockdown lay because there's only 5 games. But in a normal week, we'll talk about it more. But I love having a parlay also going for the maximum because I know sometimes there's fans out there that love straight bets. There's fans that love going for the maximum. I love personally doing both because if your straight bets hit, but then your max one going for the maximum doesn't, you still make some profit on the week. But overall, with that all said, week 0 is finally upon us. I cannot be any more excited. Let's just have a great time watching college football. Don't forget that the sport is very special and it only comes around so often, and every year has its different feel to it. I'm just excited to be back watching football. Waking up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, turning on College Game Day is one of my favorite things, and watching college football for literally 10 hours, sports betting and just watching it and just learning about these teams. Obviously, I'll learn a lot from these Saturdays, but make sure you enjoy them. I mean, obviously, a week and a half from now, we're going to have Lee Corso's final ever College Game Day, which is going to be a very sad moment. But just moments like those, you don't expect to come, and they do. So do not let these Saturdays go to waste. Do not enjoy them. And with all that said, I'm super excited with all these reviews I have in for you guys. Super excited to see how these work out. I'm excited for you guys to listen. And obviously, thank you guys for listening. If you guys don't agree with the picks, then you guys can text me. You guys can say in the DMs. Just let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions too. But with that said, super excited for week 0. Obviously, week 1, we'll have a lot more to dive into. Want to thank you guys for showing up, listening to all this. And with that said, the Security Talkdown is done for episode 2.